Today we bring a group of distinguished and inspiring founders and leaders, each with their own unique path, success, challenges, but also lessons that we can all learn from. Let's begin our first conversation. And please note that today's conversations are open for Q&A sessions. So if you have a question, please let me know. Our first speaker and distinguished founder, طارق Monir, the CEO of Enhanced Fitness. To start off, it's a great pleasure to be here with you, Tariq. Today's platform has transformed the way people access fitness services across the region. Tariq, it's great to have you with us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to start off with a straight to the point question. If you had to start again from the beginning, what would you do differently in your first year?
I would do a lot of things differently. Look, I came into this business in 2018, and the initial idea was to set up something like Uber for personal trainers. And I remember a lot of the investors seeing me and saying, personal training, really? Like, is there any money in that business? Why would you even consider that? So, 6 years later, we operate in 8 cities right now. So we have Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Sharjah, Riyadh, Dammam, Khobar, Jeddah, Doha, and Bahrain. And we recently expanded to the US as well. So we have proven that personal training is a trade that is required and is highly in demand. Things that I would do differently is, first of all, understanding the market size and the market requirements and what investors are looking for. Maybe a better pricing strategy, and learning how to operate things that scale and learning how to scale fast as well. Because when you're running a business from Dubai or Abu Dhabi, which are really big cities, at the end of the day, the population is still sub 5 million or 6 million. So when you go to a place like the US and any city is like, or any state would have tens of millions of people, you start learning that what you thought was scale wasn't actually as scale as you thought it is. And you learn to adjust, you make mistakes, you learn from your mistakes, and you start dealing with the market according to the new demand, not the demand that you're used to.
Being located in different cities such as Abu Dhabi, Dubai, and around the region and now in the US, was something that you misunderstood while building a very successful service in building in this market? So what is something that you misunderstood?
I wouldn't say I misunderstood. I mean, the ease of doing business over here is very important. So getting a trade license, operating in multiple cities, understanding how long it takes to open a bank account, something as simple as that. How long it takes to say, okay, I'm going to do the same service that I'm doing in Dubai, but now I'm going to do it in Abu Dhabi. And learning that there's different rules or regulations when you move from one city to another. It wasn't much of a misunderstanding, but rather underestimating how much time it takes when you want to acquire the right licenses. I'll give you a small example. Like when we set out to open our company, the only commercial license that existed for a business in our vertical was gym. And we weren't a gym. So I would go to, the different departments or the ministries, and I'd try to explain that, no, we have an app and we are running just the personal trainers business. We're not actually running the full gym. But at that time, back in 2018, I actually had to physically write commercial license. Like I went there and I was one of the people who literally helped in writing this. And now there's plenty of companies who do kind of a similar service, but I think if I want to give advice to any founders, I would say that you need to pay your lawyers well, because any mistake you make in the beginning would be very costly later. And you need to really understand how long it takes from the moment of ideation until the moment of conception, until the moment of execution. And despite all of the regulatory authorities over here being completely helpful and very understanding and very civilized and trying to accommodate, it still takes a lot of time. Like setting up, again, when we move into Saudi, there's something called the visa license in Saudi, which they issue to you in like 2 hours. If you want to have an actual visa license, it literally will be open in 2 hours. But that doesn't mean that you can actually run the business in Saudi. It means that that's the first paper you require to actually start going to the other ministries and applying over there. And from the moment we got the visa license until the moment we got the bank account, it took 1 year, like a full year from the first paper until we were able to collect money. So again, I wouldn't classify it as a misunderstanding. I would just say underestimating how long it takes to run the business properly and to be able to hire people, because without a trade license, you can't have a commercial license. Without the commercial license, you cannot hire people. And every ministry would have its own regulations as to, right now there's the Emiratization over here, there's Saudization in Saudi, there's the same in Bahrain, there's the same in Qatar. So there's a lot of things that you need to be aware about. And I would just advise, like, really, really learn your lessons before you start anything.
My next question, it would be wrong of me to say failure, because I don't believe in the word failure. I just think every failure is just a lesson you learn. But it would be nice if you could share one moment where you feel like you failed or you learned a lesson, and how did that reshape how you operate today?
Well, failure is part of the journey. Any entrepreneur that tells you I didn't fail in anything, they'll just be lying. Our biggest initial failure was when we opened the company in the US. So over here, we have about 500 trainers between all of the cities that I told you about. And in order to run these trainers properly and make them efficient in any city, because if you're running trainers, I don't know, in Dammam, and you have 45 trainers in Dammam, how do you know if they're doing a good job or not? So we built a software to be able to manage each and every trainer, to be able to optimize their efficiency, understand whether they're doing good quality service, understand whether they're providing results to their clients, all of the things that are necessary for a personal trainer to be doing on the job. And then we took that software and we went to the US market with it. And the first client that signed an agreement with us was actually the third largest gym chain in the US. And it's called Crunch Fitness. Now, to give you an idea how big Crunch Fitness is, they have 4 million members. So that's the population of, a city. The population of all of Dubai probably is 4 million. And these guys have 4 million members inside the facilities. And they have 12,000 trainers. So we took an infrastructure that we were running to manage 500 trainers, and we thought that infrastructure would actually work for 12,000 trainers and 4 million members. And it turned out it doesn't. So with that kind of scale, the software started breaking. Like, we had downtimes, we had data issues, we had capacity issues, we had transactional issues. So we ran into severe problems on the first iteration of launching the software. Now, what we did was we hired a US team, we mitigated all of these risks, we did a lot of refactoring, which is pretty difficult when you're in the software business, because refactoring means that you have to rewrite the entire code of anything that you build in order for it to work for a new scale. And I wouldn't say that everybody recognized that the failure was happening, because we kept kind of patching something and then rolling something else, patching something, rolling something else. So on the surface, things kept looking okay, and nobody realized that we were facing all of these struggles. Underneath, it's like a duck, when the duck is floating in the water and you see, it's calm. Underneath, there's a lot of work happening. So we were really doing mega efforts. Everybody had to stay in the office over weekends, overnight, to keep things up and running. I think also, being somebody who comes from a business development background, I did not know enough about software. So when we signed that agreement, I probably should have known a little better about what it takes to scale from 500 to 12,000 or larger. And I had to learn on the job. Like, I had to figure out that running a software business is very different than running a service business. And that if you don't get your hands into the dirty water, and if you don't start learning about what it means to actually operate at that scale. So right now we have about 60 people in the engineering team, well, tech, product, and data. So that's engineers, designers, and back-end developers, you call it. And I didn't used to know the difference between one and the other. I didn't understand, what the Flutter language meant versus TypeScript language. Like, there was a big gap in my own understanding about software development. And it took me about 1.5 years to really understand what changes we need to do, what improvements we need to do. And I'll call that the biggest learning that we've had on the job, or I've had on the job.
Before I move on to my next question, I'm going to open the conversation to the audience. Does anyone have a question they'd like to ask طارق? If not, I have a question for you. Everyone sees founders as people that know it all. But little do they know is that it is also a learning process for them while making or expanding their businesses. My question is, how do you maintain a leadership trait where you make every single person in your team feel the need to come to work or to be at work and feel the need to contribute, even at times where they feel like we're gonna fail right now?
Well, if anything I learned of being a founder is that founders know nothing. Otherwise, they wouldn't be in the business itself, because the ratio of success of any startup is 1% to go from seed funding to Series A. And then it's 10% to go from Series A to Series B. So 10% of the 1%. So basically, from idea until Series B, you have 0.1% chance to actually make it. If nobody would buy a lottery ticket at these percentages. So what founders are made of is, first of all, I would say ignorance is bliss, that you dive from top of the building and then you learn to fly on the way down. Second is resilience, because you need to be able to take the punches and you need to be able to roll with all the difficulties and understand that it's part of the journey. Third is team management, in the sense that keeping your staff motivated and keeping everybody wanting to come is almost like a schizophrenic reality, because you're the only one who actually knows the real challenges and that you might run out of money at any point. But you can't go and tell that fact to everybody on the team, because everybody would leave. So you have to, first of all, drink your own Kool-Aid. You have to believe that the mission's going to be successful. You have to believe that you're going to get there no matter what. And you have to understand that the reality of what you're facing cannot mirror what you're talking to the team about, and that what the team needs to know is that we're doing everything we can in order to continue our successful journey. But if you show some of the levels of struggle, you need to keep a level of filter so that they understand that we're going through a little bit of turbulence, but that the pilot's eventually going to land the plane where it should land.
Throughout your journey, I think my question would be, what was one of the hardest decisions you had to make as a founder?
I would say letting people go. You know, when you start business, you hire whoever you can hire, because you can't pay people benchmark salaries. You can't pay people, you know, top dollar. You have to settle with whoever is willing to be on the journey. And these people are your early believers. These people are the guys and the girls who want to be with you on the journey. And they are the ones who take you from point 0 to point 1. But unfortunately, the reality is people who take you from 0 to 1 are not the same people who take you from 1 to 10. So when you hit that capacity limit, or when you hit that threshold where these individuals who have tried everything they can to help you out on the journey are not the ones who can actually continue, you have to make the hard decision of just, you know, letting them go, and, you know, them going to help other founders with the 0 to 1 process, and you have to scale from 1 to 10. And, you know, I've had a lot of corporate jobs where, you know, I've had to let people go, and it never gets easier. I mean, obviously it becomes even harder when it's your own business, because they know it's your decision. You cannot come and say, there's been a corporate demand that we downsize. They know that you're letting them go for other matters, and that you're the one pressing the button. And people react differently. I mean, some people understand that, you know, that's the nature of the job. Some people understand that any company growing will have to go through that, but a lot of people will take it very personally, and that's always kind of the hardest part about the journey.
And looking back, what operational lessons had the biggest impact on your success today?
I would say that knowing how long it takes to fundraise is one of the operational inexperiences I've had prior to entering. So we would kick off a fundraising round and say, all right, we have 3 months to complete that. In reality, no funding round gets done for 6 months. And if you don't have enough runway to actually sustain that, then you might run out of cash. And if you run out of cash, it's lots over. So planning for a fundraise, understanding how, and you have to understand also, like, now there's ChatGPT, there's Claude, there's Gemini, there's a lot of information that's widely available to everybody. Back then, there was just Google, and you would have to Google everything on your own, and you wouldn't necessarily get the right answers, and you wouldn't necessarily know what the right things would be. And some of these mistakes are very costly. You know, you end up losing a lot of time, you end up losing a lot of money, and you end up sometimes losing a lot of good people. So understanding the fundraising journey, what it takes to go to investors, you know, investors here and everywhere are just trend driven, and sometimes when you come to them with something like personal training, they'll say, like, is there even money in personal training? Like, no. So yeah, we learned that on the job. So that would be probably the one operational experience I would improve.
I always like to ask people one question. The definition of success differs from one person to another. If you had to define success today, how would you define it?
If I can sit on the beach and know that the company is running on its own, that would be success, because it's really hard to see that you've built a system that works even when you're not there. I mean, we're in the business of making people healthier. So the mission of the company has always been one where we believed from the minute we set it up that the ultimate purpose is people training, is people finding their health in a better shape. And we've trained more than 300,000 people so far, and we continue to influence that. So that's been a major success for us. But as you said, success is different from one place to another. I think for me, it was always visualizing what the next target's going to be, because when we became the largest company doing personal training in the UAE, the target moved, okay, how can we move that to Saudi? When we moved to Saudi, the target became, how can we move that to the US? So at least, and again, this is a very subjective view on success, it's always understanding that you never arrive, but you actually upgrade the journey to the next level. And, you know, with that upgrade is bringing the right people, reshaping the team, and bringing the right vision and execution to make it happen.
Is there anyone that would like to ask a question, Tariq, before we move on to our last question? What piece of advice would you give youngsters or people that just want to start their business today?
I would say understand that there's enough scale in whatever you're doing, because if it's not scalable enough, then you're probably not going to get enough funds for it. Once you understand that there is enough scale, make sure you have the right people around you to help you execute on the journey, and just be resilient, because this is a game of resilience, and people who give up or people who tend to, you know, falter after the first blow will not be made for that. So if you feel you're a person that's comfortable in your 9-to-5 job, don't go on the entrepreneurship journey. You have to know that this is a journey that is not for the faint of heart. That's a journey for people who are willing to go through a lot of sleepless nights, a lot of stress. And if you have all these, then yeah, go ahead. Otherwise, just, you know, find a good job and just stay there.
Thank you, Tariq. I really enjoyed listening to your journey.
Thank you.
Especially the realities behind scaling a business. Thank you so much.